It's just after 7 o'clock, which is our slated time for getting going. So let's get underway. Welcome to this meeting of the Orkney Archaeological Society. This is our annual general meeting, but another part of the meeting is a very interesting talk by Dr. Antonia Thomas, more of which afterwards. The first part of the meeting is formal, but it is important, and we'll get that acquitted as soon as we can. The materials for the formal part of the meeting are on our website, and indeed they were included with the Eventbrite invitation that you will have come through to join the meeting. And the papers required for that formal part of the business are with you if you choose to peruse them. So, without any more ado, knowing that we're all probably fairly familiar now with the protocols of Zoom meetings, that is, can I ask you to mute your microphone if you haven't done so? And if you wish to contribute, can you use the chat function? And we'll go straight on to apologies. I'll pass us over to our secretary, Hayley Green. Hayley, do we have any apologies for tonight?
Hi, David. Yes, we've had 2 apologies recorded. We've got Bob Smith and David Cowling, if he hasn't managed to make it into the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Hayley. So again, welcome. Welcome to all those of you in Orkney who would normally have attended the actual AGM meeting itself, and a special welcome to those Firth of Orkney who have got the opportunity to join us tonight because the meeting is online. Our first item is the minutes of our annual general meeting. That meeting took place a little later than usual last year because of COVID. Took place in October. It should have taken place in the springtime, but we worked within the regulations of OSCAR, the charity regulator, and they were happy for us to delay it. So it was an online meeting in October of last year. You have the minutes of it there, as I say, via the link that I mentioned before. I'm going to, rather than go through the minutes, I'm simply going to ask if anyone has any matters arising from it that we won't overtake in tonight's agenda. And if not, if you are happy to adopt these minutes, if you were at that meeting, as an accurate account of it. I'm taking your silence, friends, as being not indifference, but agreement. So can I assume then that we are happy to agree the minutes of our 2020 AGM? And if so, let's move on to the next item, which is the chair's report. I am the chair now. I wasn't last year at this time. It was Martin Carruthers, who is a long-standing, very experienced chair. He was chair of the committee for 10 years, and he intimated before our last AGM in October of last year that he wanted to retire from that post. He did so, and I was appointed to take his place. It's been a strange year, obviously. It's been quite a short year because we had our AGM in October 2020, and we're now just at the end of May 21. So it's been a short year, and it's been a year that has been shaped by COVID and the consequences of it. But nevertheless, it's been a fairly busy year for us. We had at last year's AGM, we had a superb talk from Caroline Wickham-Jones, one of our many experienced and celebrated Orkney archaeologists. In January of this year, we had a talk on the Caithness Broch project, which is both fascinating and deeply ambitious. And then we had an update from the John Ray Society. We had that meeting in conjunction with the Orkney Heritage Society, and we got an account of what their, another use of the word ambitious, what their ambitious plans are for Clestrain House, the home, the childhood home of John Ray, probably Orkney's most famous son, and a renowned Arctic explorer. And then in April, we had a talk on the Cairns Broch dig in South Ronaldsay, given to us by the dig director, Martin Carruthers, the chap who was also our chair previous to me. A fascinating talk, and it's interesting the things that lockdown brings to our doorstep. We had 297 people at that talk, 297 people joining us for that. It's an indication that along with the dark days of lockdown, there are silver linings to these clouds. We've carried on with our work in grants and in giving grants to archaeologists, to field workers, to students who are working on and promoting the archaeology within Orkney. It's a very important part of our function. That work has continued over the past year. We have continued to develop our web shop. It goes from strength to strength. And we have produced the 2021 Orkney Archaeological Review. And I have it here. I am holding it up to you just now. It's for sale if you're not a member of Orkney Archaeological Society. You could buy it from our web shop. If you are a member, it gets sent out free as part of your membership. It's a different review from previous years because we don't have the same number of live digs to report on, but I think you'll find it a very interesting read. So you can hear from that there's been lots happening in this past year, and we look forward, friends, to lots happening in the coming year, with or without COVID, open or not. We will be able to participate in the shop in one form or other at the Nest Dig. I'm hoping Hayley Green will tell us a little bit more about that. We'll continue with our work in offering talks on interesting archaeological subjects, and we'll continue through our website to be focused for the widest interest in archaeology that is possible. That's all I want to say just now. Hayley, can I pass over to you for a secretary's update?
Thanks, David. I was just going to very briefly refer again to another document that's been circulated and is in our website. We have to give an annual report to OSCA, the charity regulator, a trustees report. So I've copied that in there. It is the draft report, and obviously we're very happy to make changes if anybody has any. But in the main, as David has said, we're really reporting on a fairly quiet year of activity as such, but nevertheless one in which we did continue to meet, I would say, our core aims and objectives. And our core aims and objectives, which are in the trustees annual report, are about arranging educational meetings, undertaking fundraising activity, organising, publicising active archaeology. Obviously that one was less easy to do in the last 12 months, but also about raising the profile of archaeology in Orkney. And as a board, we're not suggesting that we should make any changes to those objectives at this AGM. We still think that they're broad enough to basically cover the scope of what we try to achieve, and they're very wide ranging. So as David's already said, we did have a programme of events, albeit slightly different than usual. But as David has said, I think it's been fantastic for us as a society to be able to have events where we've had people joining in, genuinely from all over the world. We've frequently had people joining us from America and from New Zealand and Australia, and people getting up at all times of the morning to come to our talks live, let alone watch them later on YouTube, which is great. One of our big projects that we've had as a society has been the St Magnus Graffiti project. I shan't say too much about that because obviously Antonia is our guest speaker, but as people will be aware, we effectively had to put the project on hold over coronavirus, and we had trained 70 odd volunteers to work with us on that, and unfortunately much of that really had just to wait until we were able to get back into the cathedral. But we are coming to the end of that now, and Antonia, like I say, will touch on that later. We weren't able to hold a Brocktoberfest in 2020, but I'm really delighted to say that we've got a very active subgroup of the board working on a Brocktoberfest for 2021. And if you remember, you'll know this because we put it in the last update, but the dates for Brocktoberfest 2021, it's going to be a full week of events, and it's going to be the 11th to the 17th of October. And the subgroup are still working on finalising some of these details, but it's likely to be a series of online events and also hopefully events that people who are in Orkney will be able to get along to as well. So watch this space in terms of that event. I'll also just mention it here in just sort of again as other information to say that we were also having a Viking festival coming up later on in 2021, and we've got Raggy and Colleen as board members have been working really hard on pulling that together. So again, the dates for that have been shared to members, but that's looking like it'll be the 9th to the 19th of September. And again, that's going to be a mixture of online and live events. And again, watch this space for more information. So although we might say that last year was fairly quiet, this year's looking like it's going to be a bumpy year of activity, which obviously we're all very excited about. And as David has already said, we've had the excellent news that the Nest Dig is going ahead this year in a slightly different form, but we will be running the shop at the Nest. And this is just a plug for anybody who's interested in working at the shop and hasn't yet got their application in. We are recruiting at the moment, and the closing date is on Friday. So if anybody is interested in that, you can drop me a note in the chat, do it privately, and I can send you the details through, but the details are on our Facebook page, and that's probably the easiest place to get them. So we will be running the shop. It will be a bit different. We're not likely to have the whole range of craft goods that we often have, partly because what we'll be doing because of coronavirus is basically people won't be able to go into the shop. So we're effectively calling it the burger van model, where our shop worker will be inside the shop with a counter, and people that want to buy things from the shop will basically have a menu on the outside, and then we'll be able to hand over the goods to them. So we just don't risk, obviously, having too many people in our very small shop at any one time. So that's the model we're going to be using. But like I say, if anybody is interested in the details for that, just drop me a message in the chat privately and I'll happily send you the information. So that will be good, and hopefully that will help us top up our fundraising so that we can continue to be as active with fundraising as we would like. We made a decision as a board that we would continue to have a sort of a fundraising pot of about £7,000 in terms of grants to give out in the next 12 months. And that's what the grants committee has to work with. So that's the basis of that. So I think that's it for my update, really, in terms of the AGM. That's a bit of a forward look as well. The only other thing I would mention is that regular people who are in Orkney in June will know that that's when we would normally have our Mess of Brogger talk, which affectionately in the committee we call the Big Nick, partly because it's usually the biggest talk that we have in the year. We're still trying to work out whether or not we'll be able to have that as an in-person talk this year or not. And we're having discussions with Nick about the likelihood of potentially having it later in the year and making it a live talk. And we're also talking with the Orkney Theatre about that. So at the moment, the date we've got in the diary for the Big Nick is the 17th of June, but we will be letting all members know, and we'll also be putting information out on Facebook and Twitter once that's firmed up. Provisionally, we may be looking to move the talk towards the middle of August, which actually would be after the end of the Nest Dig this year, because I think we would like, if we're going to have a real talk, a live talk, we would like that to have as many possible people in it as can be. And those of us that are beginning to go to events will know that obviously capacity in venues is very restricted, and so we don't really think it would be much fun to have the talk with about 35 people in the audience, when normally there'd be 300 or something like that. So we're just trying to work out the best balance on that. So bear with us on that one if you can, and we'll just keep you posted as we sort of we're able to firm that up. So yeah, so I think that's it for my update. And if everybody is happy with the draft trustees report, if anybody's got any concerns with that, we can talk it through now. And if not, we'll take that through as agreed by the AGM.
Thank you very much for that, Hayley. I don't see anything. I don't see anything coming up in the chat box, Hayley, about the trustees' report. So I think we will take that as read and approved. Thank you very much for it. The notion of the Nest Dig having a burger van run by the Orkney Archaeological Society is an intriguing one, but burger van in appearance only, not in reality. There will be no burgers, Neolithic or otherwise, available at the Nest Dig this year, but we will be there. We will be there. Quite a busy programme you can hear there. Just to reiterate what Hayley said there, we have put a very provisional date in our diary for June for the Nest talk, but we don't think it's going to happen then for all the reasons, for all the very good reasons that Hayley gave you. So the key thing to do is to watch out, and we'll be giving lots of publicity when we do get a date and a venue set for it properly, and of course a format too, because all these things are just a little bit up in the air just now. So it's a question of watching this space. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to the annual accounts. Anne Stacey from Voluntary Action Orkney is our technical support and help for that. And you have the paper from Anne in along with the batch of other papers that you have via the website or via Eventbrite. But I'll hand over to you, Anne, to take us through that, please.
That's great, thank you. There are a couple of documents that we can look at to review this year's accounts. We've got the set that is made up to the Oscar format, and that goes in with your trustees' annual report. There's also a detailed breakdown, which I think is on your website, which is quite useful for digging into the movement during the year. So from the accounts, it's quite clear to see the effect of COVID. Both the income and the expenditure is down considerably on previous years, and this is mainly due to the shops being closed for the whole time. So if we start with the restricted funds, there was income this year of £1,538, which is made up of donations of £1,288 received in memory of Adrian Chelland, and a donation of £250 that was received with instructions that the money should be used to support a student at college. So none of this money has been spent yet, so those are the closing balances on the restricted funds at the end of the year. The restricted expenditure relates to the St Magnus graffiti project, the grant that was received a few years ago, and this is the last of the grant money to be spent. So as the accounts just show a snapshot of what's happened in the year, the net effect of this is that you've got a surplus on the restricted funds of £379. So if we look at the unrestricted funds, your trading income is what you make on your shop, the sale of books and the sale of items in your online shop. The next line down is the gross receipts from charitable activities. This is your membership subscriptions for the year. And last year there were a few other bits and pieces of income. But if you look at the more detailed sheet, you can see that your membership income was broadly the same. It was fairly consistent over the past couple of years. If you look further down the page, you can see the expenditure, and it's obviously down as well. There are a few notable differences. The printing costs are down on last year, and that's because last year the Runes book was printed and it wasn't done this year. There's a bit of an increase in your postage costs, but that's due to some of last year's costs being paid this year. You can also see that there's bookkeeping and accounting fees that they're new this year. On top of this expenditure, there was £3,357 that was paid out in the form of grants during the year. So the movement on your unrestricted funds results in a deficit of £3,384. But quite interestingly, if you take the grant distribution out of that deficit, you can see that your basic income has almost covered your basic running costs. And without the grants, there would be less than £100 deficit in the year. So the bottom line is that the Archaeological Society started the year with £38,500 in its bank. And after the net deficit of the year for £3,000, the closing balance was £35,500. So it's not too bad, all things considered.
Great, Thank you very much for that, Anne. That was a model of clarity in your presentation. And somebody as deficient as myself, I think, managed to pick all of it up. Thank you for that. I wonder, before I open it for questions, I wonder if I could go to Colin Richards, please. Colin, I wonder, could you say something about the Adrian Challenge donations? I know that it was an initiative that was raised through yourself and came to the society in that way. And I know that he was a good friend of yours, and it'd be good for the AGM to hear about it.
Yes, thank you, David. Well, Adrian passed away last Christmas, on Christmas Day actually, and we thought it would be a nice thing to do rather than donate flowers and such like, that actually donate to something that Adrian really loved, and that was Orcadian archaeology. So in conjunction with yourselves, it was Hayley particularly, and yourself, David, we asked for people to donate money to the Orkney Archaeological Society, and with the idea of either providing a small research fund that perhaps would be open to UHI archaeology students, or maybe a small prize or something for some aspect of their studies. And we haven't, I'm sorry to say, we haven't actually decided which those are. And it was also an initiative of Jane Downs and myself as well. So we will be deciding that. But on the positive side, I think, Hayley, did we not? We raised over £1,000 on that.
Hayley?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. I think off memory it was at £1,157 or thereabouts. It was a very significant amount of money, and we were very pleased, obviously, to have the generosity of Adrian's friends. And obviously we bear the responsibility of making sure that that is spent wisely and well, and through yourself, Colin, obviously let Adrian's family know ultimately how that is used.
Yes, and Adrian's wife Norma, who also was Adrian did like loads and loads of geophysical surveys in Orkney, working with myself and working with Jane. One of his best surveys, I think, was Nows of Trotty, where he discovered a whole series of further burials, which were really unknown, and only, well, he did have a hard time doing that. He was constantly complaining in the bush because of the bushes and such like. But he did find a number of other very small burials where the mounds had almost completely vanished, or either that or they were very low in the first place. So he did an enormous amount of work up here, and also often accompanied by his wife Norma. So Norma's particularly really pleased that it could be done through the society, and I really would like to thank you, because you agreed to it instantly, and it was very easy to do. And she's also very surprised how much we raised. So, it was a very unpleasant event, but this is a rather nice consequence, if you like. So I think that's as far as we got, and we will of course be arranging one way or another, in conjunction with Norma and yourselves, how we're going to use that money.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you much for that, Colin. And for those of you who don't have access to the figures in front of you just now of the accounts, it's the Adrian Challenge Fund is actually standing at £1,288 just now. So excellent contributions there. Are there any questions for Anne on the accounts as she has presented them, folks? I'm not seeing anything. So can I thank Anne very much for her report? Can I assume that the finance report is approved? I'm assuming that is the case. I don't hear otherwise. Let's move on then. Thank you to the next item on the agenda, and it's Anna Gudge who's going to give us a membership report. Anna, over to you.
Just fiddling with my mute. Can you hear me? Good. I was really pleased that the membership numbers actually have increased during the year. I think this is mainly because people have suddenly started doing online research and have actually discovered us. This is what 1 or 2 people have been telling me, and that's absolutely great. As far as we're concerned, we're delighted to welcome new members and to re-welcome old members, it's very nice that people seem to stay with us. So we're obviously doing something right, which is great. All our loyal members, and I'd like to thank everybody very, very much. Most of our members obviously have email addresses and will be aware that I've been sending information out that way. I do try not to be a nuisance, but from the feedback I get, many of you are happy to hear from me. So that's always good as well. And it's lovely to hear back from those of you as well who can. So I'll be in touch about the talks and things like that. Obviously, everything goes up onto the website as well. And while I know that typing Orkney Archaeology Society gets your fingers going every which way, you can type it as oasnews.org and it'll take you to the right place. So you can always try that, or email me and I'll send you the link. Maybe, just maybe, we're going to see you all on Orkney soon if you're not resident here already. We look forward to it, and thank you very much. If you've got any questions for me, here I am. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Anna. And that report of Anna's, again, is, along with the other ones, online. Are there any questions for Anna?
David, there's a question in chat. I think it's from Keith.
Yeah.
Asking what the net increase in membership is, if Anna's got that to hand.
Anna, could you have a look at that? The question that Keith is asking, he said £1,288. What is the net increase?
What the net increase? Sorry, the net increase in postage. Sorry,
sorry, folks. I'm not picking that up. Keith, I'm not hearing you. Can you?
No, my internet's gone.
No, Anna, the question is, what's the net increase in members, not postage? That's two things have got mixed up together there in Keith. Yeah.
Oh, the net increase in membership. Hold on, yeah. I can tell you that. I think we've got 440 now, and last year, if I just look quickly, shouldn't take me a moment. Hold on. Oh. Meetings 2020 AGM. So at the AGM last in October, we had 404. So the net increase is something like 36.
That's nice. Well done.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, excellent.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for your response, Anna. Anything else under membership? I'm hearing a voice from a distance, but I can't hear what's being said. No more questions?
Don't think so. You can probably hear the cat.
Sorry, I'm not picking up the question, if indeed it is a question, because I can't hear. Keith, try again. No. I see you shaking your head, Keith, so I assume that we can move on. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, it's the last part of our formal part of the agenda. It is the trustees, the election of trustees. At each annual general meeting, ladies and gentlemen, we elect the set of trustees for the coming year. It is simply a list of people who are willing to serve in the coming year, And then at the first meeting of the trustees after the annual general meeting, we elect the office bearers and the responsibilities. So we have, again, referring back to the website and the Eventbrite invitation, a list of proposed members for the coming year. The names that you see there, they run in alphabetical order from Anna Bain through to George Vickers, are the people who in fact have served over the past year and who have indicated that they are willing to serve again in the coming year, which we're delighted to see. However, we don't want to exclude anyone who is keen on playing a role. So what we can do is we have the power of co-option. And if others are wanting to join us and to play a more active role within the work of the Archaeological Society, then we would be delighted to see you as co-opted members. So without preempting your decisions, ladies and gentlemen, could I perhaps suggest that if you're happy, we adopt the proposed members who effectively is the current board, and if anyone is interested in being co-opted on, you can contact Hayley, our secretary, Hayley Green, through the website or through Facebook, and give your name, and we would be happy to process that as co-optees. That's my proposal. Anna, are you wanting to speak? No. Okay. Are we happy to adopt that procedure? Yep, I'm seeing nods round the room. If anyone is keen to join us, then we'd be delighted to hear from you. We really do work hard to make the society as inclusive as possible. I've served on it for a few years now, and I have to say that the board we have just now is absolutely super. It works well. It really is a collective. There are some people on it that are absolutely workhorses. But I think everyone plays their role one way or t'other on the board, and we have a diverse range of skills and experiences that we're able to draw on. That doesn't mean to say, folks, that we don't want to see others who would like to play a part, and we would be very happy to hear from you. But if you're happy to adopt that proposal of the list of members that you have there, who effectively is the board from last year, then we will adopt that formally, and we shall move on to the next item, which is any other competent AGM business. And I do know there's an item that Hayley wants to raise with us, so I'll pass over to Hayley to tell you about it. Hayley.
Thanks, David. Before I do that, if I should just say I've put my email into the chat. So if anybody is interested in becoming co-opted onto the board, just send me an email through that. That's absolutely fine. We'll take it to the next board meeting. We meet the first Thursday of every month, and it's obviously online at the moment. So the issue I was going to raise, I didn't have time to submit this really under the AGM timescale, but I think many people will have seen over the last weeks or so, and particularly yesterday, the really worrying news about the cuts in archaeology courses and the cuts to archaeology courses across the UK. And so far, we're aware that I think all of the archaeology lecturers at Chester University have been put at risk of redundancy, and they're yet to hear what's happening to them. And yesterday, or rather today, the devastating news that Sheffield University Board are proposing to close a number, I think, of their archaeology courses, or reduce it to a very, very tiny number from the ones that are there. And I think that there's a real feeling that this is the thin end of the wedge, and this could be the start of attacks on I think it's archaeology and history and a number of reflective courses, also arts courses as well, with cuts to funding more broadly across the piece. And I guess a sort of a feeling from some people that we're just simply being trained to be economically useful in ways rather than reflective and learning and sort of inquiring, if you will. So what I wanted to do was just to sort of seek permission from the AGM and really refer it to the next board meeting, that as a board we should take a position on this. And if nothing else, what we should be doing certainly is circulating information about it, encouraging people to raise concerns about it, certainly writing as the Archaeology Society to the institutions, and also sending support to archaeologists that are finding themselves in this position. And I wanted to raise that. I have already circulated on the Facebook page bits of information on this, but I'm conscious that that was me sort of doing it as an individual rather than sort of with the agreement of the board, although I don't expect the board to have had concerns about it. I think it is important to just get that sort of approved. So I don't have a sort of a real proposal other than just to, I guess, remit to the board at its first meeting, which will be next week on Thursday, to sort of pick this up and maybe to make some public statements as well, just in terms of supporting archaeologists and archaeology courses across the UK. So if everybody is okay with that, then I'd like to bring a more detailed proposal. And what we will do is we'll obviously let members know what we're doing, and we'll pop it up on Facebook and Twitter and the usual places as well, and also on our website.
Thanks very much for that, Hayley. An important issue to raise with us there. I see Colin Richards is waving. He's not waving and he's not drowning, but you want to say something on this, Colin?
Yes. I'd like to support you, Hayley, on that. A lot of us have written to the people in the department and also to the Pro Vice Chancellor and such like. I don't think all's lost yet. There may still be, because I'm not sure what level of this decision has been made, and it may well be because they were deluged with support and so forth. But just to put it in context, I just learnt this evening, and it apparently that it's not just UK this is happening. Sligo in Ireland, which has been running an archaeology degree programme for, I don't know, about 7 years now. That seems that that's been shut as well, which is really disappointing because there's some good people there. Marion Dowd you might know of because she's written so much on caves and such like, and Sam Moore, certainly friends of mine. So this seems to be a sort of more general trend, and not wanting to go on too long, it's a trend where single honours subjects, well, single honours archaeology is seemingly diminished, whereas joint honour programmes do seem to still be holding their own in some places. And I also learned that Birmingham also is going to be reviewed yet again in next year. So it's quite trying times for archaeology. Rather selfishly, we're pleased to know that things seem to be going quite well here in the Archaeology Institute, but I very much feel for colleagues further south, because when I was at Manchester, I was involved in a review there, and it's quite stressful for the people, because basically, you know, these universities can be really cutthroat, and they just can cut staff if they wish to. So I'd very much support that initiative, Hayley.
Great, Colin. That's very helpful. Thank you much. Thank you very much for that. I know that proposal, Hayley, will meet with unanimous support of us all in the room today. It's not just the colleagues that Colin's speaking about. It's not just the students who go through the universities, but it's communities as well that will be affected by that, because archaeology is built into the absolute fabric of the identity of our communities throughout the country. They help us identify not only who we were, but who we are now. And I think for a community-based organisation like Orkney Archaeological Society to lend a voice of support that's out with the academic community to the departments under threat would be very valuable. So I welcome that, and I look forward to whatever the incoming board sees fit as a way of supporting the departments under threat just now. Can I assume that Hayley's proposition has our approval? I hope I can call that unanimous approval, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. The last word I want to say in this formal part of the business is a very big thank you to our outgoing board. They are also, for their sins, going to be the incoming board, but they've worked very hard over the past year to service the society, to carry forward its aims, and to make it an outgoing and accessible organisation. Thank you to each and every one of the board members, and we look forward to your contribution in the coming year. Let's move on from formalities. Hayley, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt when you were just about to finish. I've just had a bit of a nudge from Anne that we need to have our auditor approved for the next year. So we've generally used, or we have used, Davy Campbell from VAO. So if the AGM is happy with that, well, I propose that we continue with using Davy.
Great, Hayley. Thank you for reminding us of that, Anne. Is the meeting happy to adopt that proposal from Hayley with our auditor continue? And I'm seeing thumbs up all around the room. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Hayley. Okay, that brings us to the end of the formal part of the business. We're now